Hello and welcome to another episode of Melons FAQ. This time I'm just going to quickly go over essentially why sometimes front wheel drive cars can in fact have too much oversteer. Also, this is actually a live recording, which means that this is as I am playing that I'm recording this, so hopefully everything goes pretty smoothly here, but I'm playing against the hardest AI in Race Room, which hopefully I can keep pace with, but I feel like it's going to be quite a challenge to try to keep pace with the AI that's running 132.5 as a lap time around this track. But the setup on this car is so good right now. I'm quite satisfied with it, but at the beginning there's a touch more understeer than I would like, and then it slowly becomes oversteer as the sessions wear on. The tire wear becomes greater and the fuel wear becomes greater and so on. And it really changes the dynamic of the car, but then the excessive oversteer that comes later on in the session is actually, oh man, really too much oversteer later on in the session, and it's tricky to control and actually be quick, but you can do it, which makes it a very fast setup overall. But towards the end of the session it can be challenging to keep it under control. It's why, you know, racing drivers earn more money than, for example, mailmen. Even though both are just driving cars, one is a significantly harder task to do. But as you can tell here, we're off to a pretty good start. We're still in the position where we qualified in 4th place, but the AI is damned quick in this game when you set it at the maximum top speed possible, which is in this game a percentage level, if you will, which in this case it's 120%. Which is essentially the same pace that World Touring Car Championship drivers would actually go, give or take maybe a couple of tenths of a second. We're talking about like the best of the best being, you know, on display. And the AI really does have a good launch out of that corner, you can tell there. But did you? It might be sort of hard to see where I'm putting my steering in terms of where I'm placing my car on the track right now, but you can definitely possibly sense that there's a touch of oversteer. Oh man, I'm running wide here. Let's see, nobody's passing me yet. Okay. There's a touch of oversteer, and it's a really nice touch of oversteer, but if I had set the suspension up at all any more loose or any more oversteer than what there is right now, I'm picturing it would probably be much slower, just simply because I wouldn't be able to turn this car as much as I want to. See, this corner, you're pretty well full throttle through the first section. You just try to brake in a straight line as you come through the second section there, over the crest here where the car is going to wash out. There's compression there where the car is going to get some grip, and then you come over a crest and the car will wash out again. You're full on the throttle through the tunnel here, full on the throttle. You try to get as close onto this curve as you can in order to follow right behind where Ivan Muller is driving there, just to keep the car in a perfectly straight braking line towards the outside of the track on the turn-in for the next section of track there. It's honestly even hard to continue to talk at the pace that you're driving at right now, but this is how you have to drive in order to keep pace with the AI at this level. But there you go with the lift-off oversteer there. That was semi-intentional, but not fully intentional. And that was a good example of why sometimes a front-wheel drive car can in fact have oversteer, and it can have too much oversteer, because that was quite a bit of it. And any more suspension setup towards the loose side would probably actually be slow. I'm really pushing as hard as I can to see if I can catch up, but I'm really not sure that I can catch up to the leaders right now. At least not as it stands right now. But it's possible that towards the end of the race, maybe the tires will go off, or the AI will get into a battle that's going to cost them time or something like that. But right now, as it seems like any time that I try to gain time, I'm going to trade it off for time in a different spot. Any time that I try to play with my racing line to see about if I can gain any advantage at all, there's not much advantage to be had against this AI right now. And here we go, I'm watching, yeah, this Ivan Müller in third place just ahead of me there. He has such a good exit out of that corner that it's nearly impossible to actually catch up to him there. I just sort of feel like I'm running a time trial for 15 minutes with cars that are in front of me and behind me. It doesn't even really feel like a race because everybody's almost too scared to try to step out of line and lose the time in terms of attempting to make a pass. If you attempt an overtake and you're on the wrong side of the track, the guy behind you is going to pass you and you're going to lose so much time to the car in front of you that you're actually going to be worse off than if you had just stayed in line and hopes that the car in front of you would make a mistake. And to do so is actually not exactly the best option in terms of a long-term race strategy, but it's hard to really come up with another strategy when you're at such a high level that there's barely any time to be had on. Whoa. Okay, so I'm not going to hook that curve anymore. I feel like that could actually cause me to roll the car. Other than that, though, it's like I'm saying, there's such a performance gap in lower classes, I should say, that doesn't exist in this class, that you're trying to sort of eke out every tenth of a second that you physically can by braking as late as you can. And, oh, Ivan Müller's getting a little wide there, a little loose there. Oh, and he's still on the throttle quickly there. He is so quick through that last corner, I don't know how. That's the sort of thing that really shocks me. Hugo Valente is still right behind me there. Let's see. Oh, I'm pushing wide here. Might have locked one of the front wheels there. That was really slow through that section, that lap. Really got to try to keep it under control, but when you're pushing at the same level of this, it's hard to really gain time or lose time, because at the end of the day it's sort of so closely matched that it's hard to really find a good way to just gain time, because you can sort of see. Oh, that was a good way to do it. That was a good section of corners. Okay, let's see. Does he brake? He brakes. Oh, I can't get it past him. He shut the door on me just as I was trying to go on the inside. It didn't work exactly as I wanted, but I'm still close enough that I might actually be able to get it past on here. But there's virtually no gap in the performance of the cars and the time between the drivers, so every little tenth of a second that you try to gain could be a tenth of a second that you lose elsewhere. It's so hard to get ahead when you are competing so closely as this, trying to get the car to just kiss the apex as exactly as you want, or as I drive, maybe more bash the apex into submission. Sort of club it with blunt object, like a tire or a baseball bat. It just takes one split second that you're not on the throttle soon enough, or that you maybe just shifted the wrong time or anything, and then you're going to lose time compared to the car in front or behind you. And that just makes it something else when you're racing at this level, trying to get front of the car in front of you without losing positions to the people behind you, and you're just, there's such an amount of, I don't even know what to say. It's such an amount of concentration is required that it's genuinely hard to think at a reasonable pace about what to say. And so it might seem like I'm repeating what I'm saying, but it's just because it's hard to think of something fresh to say when you're focused so hard on driving as quickly as you can. Where for that corner especially, like, you know that you're losing time there and you're trying to figure out why. You're going to focus as much as you physically can through there. Ooh. Okay, that was a quick corner, but I don't know how I managed to hook that perfectly like that. You're going to notice that, unlike in the most recent video upload from before, I'm not actually going to use that inside curb in this race because I feel like I would lose a lot of time if I did that. Whoa, Ivan Muller ran wide there. Trying to catch up to Jose Maria Lopez and Nora Mikulic, and the three of them are just gone, but you can just about tell that there's so little time to be gained or lost between the cars in front and behind that passing is almost impossible. I feel like this is sort of a lot of the problem with what happens with the Formula 1 sometimes is that some of the teams are so close to the match that it's almost impossible for the teams to actually get any advantage. The advantage comes when you've got tires that are a different compound or at different stages of their lifespan, or you've got one car that might have a stronger engine or DRS zone or anything along those lines is what forces passes, and that's why it sort of feels unnatural at this point, is because it's not the natural, well, I'm a better driver than you, so look at me as I brake later than you here because I'm so much better. You don't have that because the teams and the drivers are all at the top of their levels so much that it's nearly impossible to gain an advantage. Instead, you've got something which is sort of like this, where every driver just has to stay on their line and hope that the guy behind doesn't attempt to dive bomb, because you can't even really like bother to look behind you and see if the car behind you is trying to dive bomb, because by the time that you look and see, oh no, somebody's trying to pass me, they braked really late and they're gonna hit my door, it's already too late because you're focused on you. The car behind you, they can choose when they try to pass, but it's not really gonna happen. Not when you can't even really keep pace with the car in front or gain time on them. Where you can sort of keep pace a little bit, but maybe in order to keep pace or gain time, you have to be pretty well full throttle through one corner, which is going to be really risky in terms of whether or not you'll make it to the end without losing control. But right now I've got 2 minutes left in this race that I'm going to push and see about if I can get to the finish, get to the end, and hold on to my fourth, or possibly even get to third, because I'm really not even sure if I'm going to get to second or first at all. You don't win every race that you're in, necessarily. Sometimes you will in fact lose. That's just a part of pretty much every sport in the world. Okay, and the tires are wearing off faster than the fuel because of just how hard I'm having to turn in some of these longer hairpins. I feel like basically the car is going to begin to understeer in the last few seconds of this race. Oh, that wasn't a very good, that wasn't a very smart corner from Ivan Muller there. I'm hoping that he doesn't brake too hard here. I might be able to get a run on him with the inside through here. Let's see. Got him. I have it. Oh, are you kidding me? He held the outside line. Okay, I've got you now. Come on, bud. Let's play. I don't dare pass here. I feel like he's gonna, just close the door on me hard. And he's got such a good exit out of that corner. I still don't know how he can do that. His car must really be set up like specifically just for that corner. I put it all on the line trying to get past him there, and I have to defend again now, so I think I'm stuck with fourth in this race. Can't say I didn't try, because that was a brilliant pass attempt that I tried there, but I just feel like being on the outside line gives more momentum in that over the hill crest at, I want to say, turn 5. Trying to get anywhere near there with a pass on the inside there, I feel like you're not going to have the momentum that the outside line carries. But I tried. I really did try. I was only maybe a tenth or two off of the fastest lap from Jose Maria Lopez there, and I really did enjoy that race a lot. That was good fun. Just 3 seconds short, 3 or 4 seconds off. Let's see about... No, don't want that. I want the replay. Let's see about how this turned out. Hopefully it turned out pretty well. I'm hoping that the video replay will turn out pretty good, but it might just be a little bit jumbled with a whole bunch of curb hopping and shenanigans that you wouldn't really see too much in an actual World Touring Car Championship race. But that was something else, though, in terms of just trying to find the fastest way, where you're struggling trying to fit every tenth of a second you possibly can into every tenth of a second, every tenth of a second, every tenth of a second. And it's that was just good fun, though. It really is. Let's see how this turns out. The replay from that race. Loading screen, loading screen, loading screen. I do like that it gives all sorts of tips and so on during the loading screens, and this music in the loading screens is pretty good in this game, Race Room. But the racing is really the most important part, and I can't fault the racing at all. The racing is pretty good. I just really quite enjoy it. I just wish that there were more tracks on offer, which especially tracks that I enjoy specifically, because as much as I like some of the tracks like Norris Ring, for example, I think it is, they're just not as not interesting, not as exciting as they could be. And you've got tracks like Mid-Ohio or Macau or this one that just blow the rest of the tracks out of the water, that there's virtually no replacement for, you know, the top of the level of the tracks that are on offer. You know what? I would like to actually see it from a different camera perspective. Let's see how this goes. Oh, the noises. I tell you what, though, that is a properly good track. That is just one of the most addictingly fun tracks that you will find in any game. Just the flow of that track is so perfect. Like, You've got so many corners that you're just about full throttle through. You've got another section of corners that's really tight. You've got another section of corners that's just really flowing, that you're almost like non-stop turning, and generally the way that the track all just flows together like that is so incredibly perfect. What a fascinating racetrack that is. I'm very glad that the Sector 3 racing development team who developed this game developed this track as they did. Like, they had a free palette, let's do anything, and they sort of created one of the best tracks that I've ever ridden. In terms of the level of fun, it's right up there with Forza Motorsports with their Maple Valley track and Gran Turismo with their Trial Mountain track. It's like both of those tracks are, how should I say this, the hallmarks of that series of games, that franchise of games, if you will. That those are the tracks that if I think of someone saying Forza, I think of that. I don't like the physics in Forza. I can't really say that the physics are accurate. I just don't agree with the physics there. But what a fantastically awesome track that they do with that Maple Valley Raceway. And it's so perfect, exactly like this track in terms of just the speed and the corner flow and the development of the hills and the crests and the compressions and the valleys and even the scenery in all these tracks. You can just tell that they really thought it out. They planned it for hours upon hours upon hours, days upon days, months upon months even, I dare say, in some of the cases. And you can just feel it. Sorry again for the cut there, guys. Back to the regular as it was. We were discussing the amazing tracks that are. I really want to say that there are a couple of real-life tracks that are also quite awesome like that, but that sometimes even the real-life tracks just don't even compare to some track like this that's really amazing. But there are tracks like Sonoma Raceway, Mid-Ohio, Road America. There are tracks, Road Atlanta, a lot of tracks like that VIR that exist in real life that are also really awesome. But just this track is just breathtakingly fun in its own way. I wish this game had Road Atlanta. I wish this game had VIR. I'm hoping that maybe that'll come out sooner or later. But yeah, tracks like Nordschleife and so on. These are all tracks that are really fun. That I'm either glad to see in the game, such as Nordschleife or Road America or Road Atlanta, that I wish were in the game. But yeah, that's pretty much the only complaint that I could have about this game in terms of physics and drivability and everything. It's pretty good. It's just the lack of tracks that sort of irks me a little bit. Like, there's a lot of tracks that you sort of wonder, did I really need to try to play at some sort of Tilkejual Formula 1 track? It doesn't matter. Did you see that in the video? That was probably the best example of lift-off oversteer in a front-wheel drive car, and it wasn't actually all that fast. Again, sometimes lift-off oversteer can be a good thing, and sometimes that can be a really bad thing. But, indeed, lift-off oversteer, if you can control it, it's a good setup on a front-wheel drive car, but you have to keep it under control. I think that's when I said that I was maybe gonna roll my car if I hit that curb that way again. Really shouldn't do that. Hey, brake lock. Through the tunnel. The sound difference in the tunnel is pretty amazing. I like that you can hear the difference between in the tunnel and out. It's just one of those slight immersion factors that's pretty awesome. So since they decided to put a tunnel in, they have to make sure that it's well implemented, let's say. The car actually got a little bit airborne going over that crest there. Like, all four wheels definitely did come off the ground at least a little bit there. And that's the sort of thing that a high grip, low downforce car will do from time to time in that corner. Around for another lap. That's definitely where the almost rolling the car happened. I feel like driving with my style is sort of a death wish if you try to do that in some cars and in certain situations, and especially in real life, where in reality, outside of the sim racing world, doing something like that would probably be a very bad idea. The perpetual noise of blow-off valve there. Oh man. I love that view there with the cars. You can see them coming down the hill and just how closely each car will follow behind the car in front of it in order to stay on that racing line as much as possible. But when you get up close, you see the differences in the approaches to the racing lines. Where I ran a lot wider there trying to keep my apex speed up and still get on the throttle, but I feel like I was sort of losing time in that area of the track compared to the other AI cars. And in hindsight, perhaps I could have tightened that up a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's still fine. I still did finish the race. I got fourth. It was a reasonably good finish. I wonder if this is where I go for the attempt and rear end him. Yep. That was unfortunate, because I probably could have gotten third if I had just gotten alongside him there instead of hitting him. Oh well. I'm hoping that the frame rate isn't too jittery. It seems sort of jittery right now. If there's any small jitters in the frame rate, I'm sorry, it's because the storage space of the C drive that I've been saving these videos onto has been shrinking with the videos, and once I'm uploading them, then I'm going to have to delete them. But essentially, the frame jitters come when you're filling up that space towards the end of it, and then save all the videos, reformat them, upload them, and then I'll delete them as soon as they're uploaded, and just keep the electronic copy on YouTube. But yeah, any frame jitters that you see, then I'm pretty sorry about that, but as I mentioned, there's not much I can deal with just using that C drive to its maximum in order to produce the quality of videos that I'm trying to create, where I can discuss hopefully a lot of different topics and fully explain my thoughts about something, where in the next segment of this video I switch to a rear wheel drive car at the same track and compare and contrast about why sometimes a front wheel drive car can have too much oversteer, but why it's actually still beneficial for a front wheel drive car to have some oversteer. And it's about finding the amount that you need, just the same as it is with the rear wheel drive car, which is why I don't understand when people say, oh well, I can't drive front wheel drive, I hate it, or I'm slow with front wheel drive. or anything like that. It's like, no, it's the exact same thing. You can't accelerate out of the corner and counter steer. You have to accelerate out of the corner in order to limit wheel spin, because the biggest problem with front wheel drive is wheel spin. If you have wheel spin on the corner exit, then you have to use less throttle, and that's just the basic rule of thumb that goes across the board for every front wheel drive car ever. Everything from your average, let's say Honda Fit, Honda Jazz. Depending on where you are, it's a Honda Fit or it's a Honda Jazz, but it's the same car. You can have front wheel drive wheel spin with those cars. I've had that a lot, surprisingly, when you're driving a front wheel drive car in the snow, like a Honda Fit or anything like that, then you're going to have front wheel drive wheel spin just because of the fact that it is snowy. Simple as that. But you've got front wheel drive wheel spin in that, and then you look at one of the fastest front wheel drive cars, if not the fastest front wheel drive car ever produced, which is the Nissan GT-R LM, the 2014-2015 Le Mans prototype car that was quickly scrapped because Nissan realized, oh my god, what a terrible idea it is to make a 1000-ish horsepower car that's at least partially front wheel drive. Yes, it had some rear wheel drive assistance, so it's not a full-time all-wheel drive system, but it was a part-time all-wheel drive system, which I guess in its own right makes that actually a four-wheel drive system instead of an all-wheel drive system. But the idea of making a car that even has that much horsepower and you expect it to go around a corner and it's front-wheel drive, do you think you might be asking a little too much from your front tires? Do you think perhaps that's the problem? Because I think that's a pretty big problem. I try not to ask too much from my front tires, and I try to just drive the car as gently and smoothly through the corner as possible, minus any and all obstructions having to do with suspension due to bumps or curbs or jumps or anything like that. That's not going to be smooth regardless of what you do, because if you hit a jump or a curb or whatever, it's not smooth. It's actually a very violent, very big impact. There are some curbs out there that when you hit them in some types of cars, even at a racetrack or whatever, it actually hurts. Anybody who's ever done anything with go-karting, like racing go-karts, they will tell you curbs sometimes really do hurt because you can hit them pretty hard. But that's only if you make a mistake and get it wrong, because for the most part, the way that you hit the curbs in those is intentionally soft. You can bounce over them a little bit, but a lot of times, even bouncing over them, you're bouncing over them with the inside tire, where the outside tire is still on the ground, meaning that the weight is transferred off of that corner and you barely feel it because that side of the cart comes off the ground and you're just on two wheels there, but you barely feel it, versus if you hit the inside curb nicely and then you sort of understeer a little bit wide and hit the outside curb, when that corner is loaded, that's what really hurts when you're driving a cart like that. But the same idea applies, though, that it's not about how smoothly you're driving in terms of not overdriving the car and expecting too much from the front tires, so much as it is trying to get the most of it without exceeding the grip. But that's, if you're going to try to quickly drive well or so on, then the way to do that is to maximize the traction and give yourself the biggest, widest arc. And sometimes that means hitting the curbs, and that's not smooth in terms of the comfort of being in the car, but it's smooth in terms of the steering inputs required. And I think if you can separate that, then that's one of the tips that I have for driving front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive. Just to drive smoothly, but front-wheel drive especially, you have to be smooth because you're going to set your car up with enough oversteer that you won't have huge errors huge problems or anything along those lines that will cause that lift-off over. Sorry about the random cut in the video there, but I wanted to make a point about essentially the rear-wheel drive versus all-wheel drive versus front-wheel drive debate. That a lot of people will say that front-wheel drive is slow and that it's not fun to drive and whatever. Well, right now I'm in a rear-wheel drive car. It's the exact same track. I hope you recognized it in the beginning of the video earlier today. But essentially, this is an entirely different sensation in that there's a lot more understeer. And people are going to say, oh no, it's rear-wheel drive, it can't have understeer. No. Just no. The front-wheel drive cars actually have less understeer because they're set up that way. Because if you get a little sideways, all you have to do is just pin the throttle and it'll come straight again for you. You don't have to worry about pretty much anything happening in terms of understeer or oversteer really causing the car to crash. Because, again, it's front-wheel drive, it's pretty easy to control if you get it wrong. But it's hard to drive a front-wheel drive car quickly. And when I say that, I don't mean like somewhat quickly. I mean like top of the leaderboard, like ultra fast. Because you're going to have lift-off oversteer in some of the worst positions for it. Like right when you're not expecting it, where you're not expecting it, and so on. I almost rear-ended him. Gotta get my braking points in check because this car doesn't have quite the same braking as the front wheel drive one that I was driving before. I feel like the DTM 1992 cars in this game have less traction and less grip overall as well. There's actually just a genuine lack of grip in comparison to the front wheel drive WTCC 2015 cars. And that's fine, it's just that when you're middle of a race, you're clearly going to be fighting it a lot more through the corners. That there's a lot more of a sort of fighting, understeer, oversteer, neutral sort of balance, where you're not just sort of fighting oversteer with pinning the throttle in order to come out of a corner quickly, but there's a lot more balancing the car out that has to happen. Bad on my part. But yeah, the same AI difficulty, which is why I'm not really gaining or losing time again. But you can certainly tell that where my racing line differs from the AI's racing line, there's a lot of time to be had and gained and lost in this. Because of course the cars are so much twitchier and so much harder to drive. You can't just sort of get on the throttle as quickly as the car in front of you. It's an entirely different experience in racing a car like this. That it's kind of the opposite of the WTCC car, where the WTCC car you have to be in line the whole time, you can't really break out of the line. But with this, it probably is a good idea to break out of the line, simply because then if the car in front of you makes a mistake, maybe you aren't going to be right there to rear-end them. I mean, not that that would actually happen in a race or anything. So yeah. Essentially it comes down to trying to find your way past the car in front without putting yourself in a bad situation yourself. That's the same with any car, but with the rear-wheel drive type car, maybe you can get on the throttle in a different manner that you're not going to have to worry to the same extent about how do I say, being freight trained off because you're not on the perfect racing line. With the rear-wheel drive car, you can sort of play with it a little bit more, because you're not at the ragged edge in the corners as much, because you can't be at the ragged edge or else the car will sort of snap oversteer and spin. And I'm trying to get on the throttle there nice and smoothly to not spin up the rear tires too much, but the AI, of course, can get on the throttle better without spinning the rear tires as much because they're AI. It's sort of one of the advantages of being an AI is they always know roughly how much throttle they can put in. A little bit better than an actual human driver. As a general rule of thumb, at least. There are some people who are probably screaming at me thinking, oh no, I totally know how to get on the throttle better than the AI. And I bet his name is William. Shut up, William. Kidding, but honestly though, you don't have to brag about being better than everybody in it. But let's compare this car to the front-wheel drive car earlier though. It's still a similar race, but driver talent has such a bigger role to play. Because you can't just bang the curbs and just pin the throttle and the car will just follow itself through the corner. If this car hits a curb the wrong way, then you can actually get it out of shape. And it's... Oh! Okay, he braked early there. That time it was not me. Like right there, I was on the curb and the car got out of shape because of the curb and because of the throttle application. Where the polar opposite would have happened in the WTCC, because the WTCC has the front wheel drive car, which would straighten out if you got on the throttle too hard. Yeah, I've still got space to behind. Let's see what's coming up here. Going for the outside? I don't know if it's gonna work. He's there. Can't make it. I really like that corner section though, because I can carry so much more speed through that corner section simply by settling the car down sooner than the AI does. Oof, that's bad understeer there. I feel like that was almost aero push because I was so close to the car in front of me that the aerodynamics of the car washed out. And I didn't have the downforce that I normally would have had. That was a good corner exit on my part. Right up. Still not a fastest lap, huh? Oh man, 137.6, and that was actually a faster lap than the guy in front of me. He's going slowly right now. Tried up the inside and... Wow! Okay then. That was a slightly, not fully clean overtake, but I'll take it. I'm in the lead this time, and I still haven't even run a 136, let alone a 133. With this car, everybody will say that front-wheel drive cars understeer a lot, but this car has a lot more neutral sort of understeer type setup than the front-wheel drive WTCC Sit. Which, honestly, it comes down to the approach in tuning the suspension, that a front-wheel drive car can handle having a much stiffer rear suspension because it's not doing anything at the back except for supporting the car and providing balance to the chassis. But within the rear-wheel drive car, you've got a sort of 50-50 that the front wheels and rear wheels are doing equal amounts of work. which means that you have to keep the suspension relatively equal front to rear as well. Because if you tried to make one suspension too soft, then the other is going to have a loss of traction because it's going to be too stiff. In the case of stiffening the rear suspension in a car like this, and softening the front suspension, then the rear will step out quite frequently, in fact. Simply by the nature of the beast, as it were. Because, you guessed it, because it's rear-wheel drive. It's got a nice, even weight distribution front to rear. I want to say it's about 50-50. It feels like 50-50. The shock absorbers and so on are pretty well balanced. And the steering, the general power application and so on, it's all very well balanced. But what that means is that there's understeer, because on a rear-wheel drive car, a neutral steering is going to be different than on a front-wheel drive car. As that was a very, very big moment there. But what it comes down to, though, is just simply a colossal difference in the approach in building and tuning and preparing these race cars. That a front-wheel drive car will intentionally be set up with so much more oversteer because it will pull itself straight. That a front-wheel drive car is set up differently. It's not that a front-wheel drive car understeers more or understeers less. It's that it understeers differently. Because the understeer is an entirely different understeer. It's a lot more frequent that you're going to have an understeer followed by a huge lift-off oversteer if you try to correct it. In a front-wheel drive car, that's what happens. In a rear-wheel drive car, that doesn't happen. You know, when you tap the brakes, you might get like the slightest little tuck in, but it's really not enough to be at the point that you sort of think to yourself, wow, this car is really oversteering a lot. You can sort of adjust a rear-wheel drive car mid-corner a lot more easily than you can with a front-wheel drive car. There's an example of that. I dabbed the brakes there with intention to make the point that I can turn in. And I'm not going to have that huge oversteer that I would have had with the front-wheel drive car. But there's a point where any car oversteers too much, and front-wheel drive cars actually reach that more frequently, I dare say, simply because the car is set up to be at a point where it's almost undrivable in how stiff the rear suspension is and the amount of toe and the amount of camber and everything at the front wheels that makes the grip all at the front and nothing at the back in order to induce or create understeer and oversteer at the right moment throughout the corner, where you would rather have the oversteer at the apex and then have that induced understeer from hitting the throttle after the exit of the corner, simply because that's where you are trying to get the car in a straight line to get on the throttle. And you don't want to be fighting oversteer while trying to get on the throttle in any drivetrain. And so that's one of the things that really makes it apparent when you're driving a car like this that's rear-wheel drive, that it's not as much a lift-off oversteer so much as it is like sort of on the throttle oversteer, or a big bump oversteer, where the car will oversteer simply because it hits a bump and that upsets the chassis because the weight distribution is so even that changing the amount of weight transfer to the front and rear by hitting a bump, which acts as a compression or a crest, will drastically change the sort of steering attitude, if you will, the way that the car is controlled and the way that the car is driving. There's a good example of what happens when you hit a bump the wrong way in a rear-wheel drive car. You have a little bit of understeer simply because there was a bump there. In the Citroen, that didn't really happen that much because the suspension was so stiff that anytime you would hit a bump wrong, it would pretty much just oversteer the slightest bit, but you wouldn't even have to really catch it because the car does that automatically when you hit the throttle. That's how a front-wheel drive car is driven. And I think a lot of people who sort of dislike the idea of driving a front-wheel drive car really haven't understood the concept of applying the throttle in order to straighten the car out. I think they're stuck in the mindset of lifting off of the throttle whenever they begin to slide. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not as fast in a rear-wheel drive car as I am in a front-wheel drive car, simply because I tend to get onto the throttle when the car begins to slide, and I'll use the steering to correct. And there's a good example of that, which I actually did that unintentionally, but it worked out well in the end. Ooh, that was a good corner through there. I'm looking at the gap to the car behind, and that corner section there that I just went through, and it had that little brake lock right near the wall there, the blue colored wall, and I got a pretty good gap on the car behind there, and then lost it all in the corner after that because I was essentially busy commending myself about having done the last corner so damn well. There you have it.